Hello and welcome to my cruise pod. I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. In this episode, we're diving deep into the 10 biggest mistakes newbie cruisers make. So let's get right into it. Without a doubt, the number one mistake that new cruisers make is one that I definitely was guilty of, which is overpacking. I asked this question to my Facebook community and overwhelmingly, overpacking was what everybody said. Like 90% of the commenters, and there were hundreds of comments, said it was overpacking. So let me read to you one of these comments. Jennifer S. said, I took crazy amounts of clothes, pretty much wore my swimsuit and cover up all day. Had to dress up for dinner, but I definitely had too much stuff. So yeah, sometimes we get a little overzealous with cruising and we end up packing multiple outfits a day. Now it can get tricky because if you're like me and you like to go to the pool, but not for too long, then you have to change into an outfit to tool around on the ship, or if it's a port day to go out on the port. And then if you love having dinner in the main dining room, you then have to change clothes, usually, if you care about following dress code, to wear something nicer to dinner. So it can definitely get tricky when you're wearing sometimes 3 or more outfits a day, and then you add pajamas to that. And if you're like me, you like to pack 40 pairs of underwear because you think you're gonna piss yourself multiple times a day. I don't know why I do that. We all do that. But packing more than you need can really clutter up your space and complicate your cruise because your stateroom doesn't have a lot of room in them. And I have to fly into my cruise port locations. I don't have the luxury of driving, and I absolutely refuse to check a bag. I only do carry-on. I don't want to risk my stuff getting lost. I don't like the time that it takes. I don't like the expense of it. So I am strictly a carry-on only girl. So I've gotten really good when it comes to not overpacking, and I will tell you the number one mistake that people make when it comes to overpacking, and it is shoes. My first cruise, I took an entire carry-on just of shoes. And then I had my regular big suitcase, which I did check back then before I knew better, with all of my cruise clothes. And this was a short, like 5-day cruise. I don't know what I was thinking. Well, I didn't know what I was thinking because I was a newbie and I didn't know any better. So really be disciplined with your shoes. I highly recommend only bringing max 4 pairs of shoes. You want your closed-toed shoes, like your tennis shoes. These are great for just walking around the ship. And they're also important if you do any excursions like zip lining, because sometimes those more adventurous excursions will require closed-toed shoes. Another example is Carnival Cruise Line if you ride the Bolt roller coaster, things like that. Another type of shoe is you want your slides, your slippers, your sandals. These are the things you're gonna wear if you're going on a Caribbean cruise. You obviously don't need these in Alaska necessarily unless you're a pool person, but this is when you're at the pool, when you're at the beach, when you're at the port and it's hot weather conditions. The third type of shoe you want is a neutral dressy shoe. If you don't care about dressing up for dinner in the main dining room and you just eat in the buffet, you don't need any type of fancier shoes, your tennis shoes, your flip-flops, those are just fine for that. But if you do like to go to the main dining room and have that sit-down meal experience, you definitely want to wear a nicer shoe. But this is where I got in trouble. I brought multiple shoes, a different pair of shoes for every outfit and every single night. And now I just bring a black pair or a camel colored pair of low heels, and I just wear those the whole cruise. And then the fourth optional type of shoe is a water shoe. I personally hate water shoes. I find them squishy, moist, and gross. But certain locations like Princess Key, for example, is a private island that Princess, Carnival, and Holland uses. It's really rocky. So if you're going there, you definitely want and need water shoes. But be disciplined with the shoes, and that will definitely help when it comes to not overpacking. Now, someone else on my community said something similar. Tony W said his issue was packing a different suit for each night of the dinner. And yes, that is just such a great point. When it comes to the main dining room, you do not have to wear a different ensemble every single night. Trust me, nobody's gonna care and nobody is going to notice. Ladies, just bring 2 to 3 dresses or dressier outfits. Men, 2 dressier outfits, 2 pairs of dressy pants, button-ups, whatever. That's fine. Just alternate and rotate. You're good. You don't need to wear something different every single night. Recycle those MDR clothes. And side note, elegant night these days, it's not so much elegant night on most cruise lines unless you're sailing a luxury line like Cunard. So black tie is not required. I made that mistake on my first cruise. I brought basically like a prom dress. I think it was gonna be like black tie gala-esque, and it wasn't. So cocktail attire, which is usually easier to pack, is just fine. Now, before we move on to number 2, and I know we spent a lot of time on number 1, but this is really the biggest mistake that cruisers do make, is one area you do not want to skimp on the packing. One thing you do not want to leave at home is a jacket or a sweater. Because friends, it gets cold as a morgue on those cruise ships. I am a sweaty Betty. I feel like I'm hot all the time. I'm not one of those, oh my God, I'm always cold all the time, girls. That's not me. But I freeze on cruise ships, even in Caribbean itineraries. So I always just bring one jacket, usually a jean jacket or a sweater or a long sleeve button up, just one, and just have it with you, because especially in the main dining room, some of the entertainment venues, it gets really, really uncomfortably cold. Now, the second mistake that cruisers make when they don't know any better is flying in the same day as your embarkation. Now, on my cruise community, a lot of people weighed in on this, and Dwayne D says, flying in the same day as the cruise. We ended up making it, but it was stressful. That was 20 years ago, but we never made that mistake again. Now, full disclosure, I'm a bad girl. You're not supposed to do this, but I'm not gonna lie to you, full disclosure. I do sometimes fly in the same day as my cruise. Now, there are some conditions to that. I have a whole video about it, but if you're a newbie cruiser, trust me, don't do it. You don't know what you're doing. A lot of things can go sideways. You're not yet a seasoned traveler. Just don't do it. Believe me, don't do it. Because while it is efficient, you don't have to take another day off of work. You don't have to do another day of childcare if you have kids. You don't have to get a hotel in your port city. It leaves you literally no room for error. Okay, a little bit of room for error, but not much. Flight delays and cancellations can absolutely ruin your cruise before it starts. And I'm telling you, that cruise ship will not wait for you. If you are not there, it is gone. It doesn't matter if your flight got canceled or delayed, that cruise line doesn't care. It's going to leave without you. So arriving a day early gives you a buffer for flight delays and cancellations, or even if you're driving, sometimes you never know when you're gonna have a major traffic jam that delays you for hours. And you just really don't want to take that risk. And you also don't need the stress, because even if you make it, it can be stressful if you have some sort of delay. Just recently, a really good friend of mine was sailing on a Royal Caribbean sailing, and her flight was delayed, and she was playing the game of flying in same day, and she ended up making the sailing by, I'm talking like the skin of her teeth. I'm talking like sail away time was like 3:30 and she arrived at like 3:28, that close. Like she had to beg and cry the cruise line employees, even though she was just right before the time to get on, and she barely got on. And let me tell you how stressed she was. She was calling me the whole time. I didn't think she stood a chance in hell of making it. So I kind of told her, I was like, I wouldn't even get on the plane, but she made it. So it's just not worth the stress. Just don't do it. Just fly in the day before. Allow yourself to relax. Give yourself that buffer room, especially if you're a newbie. Now, later on, when you're a more seasoned cruiser, you can take that chance if you want, but I know play silly games, win silly prizes. At some time in the future, I'm probably gonna get burned. It's a risk that I'm willing to take. But newbies, don't do it. Just don't. The third mistake is not planning ahead. And this especially is true for port days. A lot of times cruisers think cruising is great, which it is because you don't have to do much planning. The cruise line gives you an itinerary, you get on the ship, you relax, you get off at the port, you get back on the ship, easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? That's true. But you need to do a little bit of advanced planning. Why? Because some of your port calls might not offer much at the port. And if you don't plan ahead and you don't book an excursion or arrange transportation or have a game plan of what you want to do, you can end up kind of screwing yourself and not having a very good time. I'll give you just one example. Progreso, Mexico is a cruise port that's pretty underdeveloped. There's not much there at the cruise port. So if you take a cruise to Progreso, you just get off at the port, you are going to be sorely disappointed that you did not make a plan in advance to do an excursion. Now, other ports, by contrast, like the private islands, for example, or Grand Turk is another great example, you don't need an excursion. There's a lot of great things to do right there off the pier in the port area, so you don't have to do as much planning. But looking in advance and figuring out what there is at each port of call, deciding whether or not you need an excursion, and if you do, planning ahead, allows you to maximize every moment of your cruise adventure instead of scrambling and trying to find something to do or getting stuck and everything's sold out, nothing's available, and you end up wasting a port day. And shameless side plug, I have free port guides for all the big cruise ports on my blog, profmelissa.com, so you can get this information for free on my website, so go check it out. The number 4 mistake is ignoring the deck plan. Each ship is kind of a little world into itself. They all have different restaurants, amenities, and sometimes hidden treasures. I recently went on a Holland America Line sailing, and even though I'm a seasoned cruiser, I made this mistake myself and I was kicking myself. Now, the first couple of days on a cruise, I like to just wander around the ship and get my bearings and figure out what's what and what's where, but I didn't do a great job on this one, and I didn't consult the deck plan. Because even if it's a smaller ship, friends, cruise ships, they're pretty daggone big. And even though this was a 2-week cruise, I really missed out on something special. It was like day 12 of our 2-week cruise, and I don't know, we ended up on a deck we hadn't been on before, and I look over and lo and behold, what do I see? The world's most magnificent library. I've never seen such a fabulous library on a cruise ship. I was like Belle and Beauty and the Beast, like, oh my God, just books on books on books on books. And I would have absolutely loved to have taken advantage of that, and I literally did not even know it was right there. So take time to explore your ship like I do, wander around on foot, but pull up that deck plan. Almost every cruise line has a deck plan on the app, and make sure you're seeing all those little hidden nooks and crannies and those special spots. You never know what you're going to uncover. Fifth on our list is overspending. Now on my community, I had someone who made a really good point. This was Michelle M. She said that her biggest mistake was pushing that charge to room, which is so easy. And that's a great point. Overspending on vacation is already a potential landmine that we all step in sometimes, but on cruise ships, it's especially easy because cruise ships are pretty much now cashless environments. So everything we do, it's just charge to my stateroom, charge to my stateroom. And if you're like me and you know that you do that a lot, especially maybe in the casino, sometimes we avoid looking at our stateroom account, which is easily accessible in the app. But with that charge to room and avoiding looking at the app, sometimes you can rack up a pretty big bill. Trust me, been there, done that, just like Michelle M. So with the convenience of charging everything to your room, it is so easy to lose track of how much money you're spending, and you start to forget that it's real money. It starts to feel like funny money. So my recommendation here, and I am very bad about not being disciplined, I'm working on this, is be proactive, set a daily budget. The most important thing though is check that app. Look at your stateroom account every day. Make sure you're staying on top of your budget, you're staying on top of your spending, you're not letting it get out of control. And the side benefit of that, cruise lines sometimes mischarge you or charge you erroneously for someone else's drink at the bar or something like that. It happens, I've seen it happen often. And if you don't catch it when you're on the ship and get it corrected, it's virtually impossible to get it fixed after you're off the ship and after you're sailing. So it's good to also make sure you're not being mistakenly charged or overcharged for something. But managing your budget wisely will definitely help with that bill shock at the end of your cruise. Mistake number 6, overindulging in the drink package. Now, Edmund on my community made this comment, which is, let me find it, definitely going too hard on embarkation day. So in Edmund's case, he specifically goes hard on embarkation day and probably feels not great the rest of the cruise because he's probably got a little bit of a hangover. Now, with the drink package, if you buy it, or sometimes you get free drinks as part of a cruise line promotion, or if you're like me and you sail on casino offers, you get free drinks either on the ship or in the casino, it can be really tempting to get your money's worth, especially on that first day. But it's really important to pace yourself to avoid spending your vacation in a blurry haze and feeling not great, and making sure that you always hydrate with water, not just with alcoholic beverages. Now, the pitfall with the drink package. I'm not a big drinker, but I have gotten the drink package before. For example, with Holland America Line, they have a have it all package, which is a really good deal. And I don't get it for the drink package. I get it because of the other stuff that comes with it. So the drink package is kind of like a side benefit. But even with that, every day I find myself pounding back my vice, which is not alcohol, it's coffee drinks, which I happen to have right here. And I find myself pounding back the coffee drinks, and that's a lot of sugar, that's a lot of calories, that's not healthy, because I'm trying to get my money's worth. And I see people do this also with alcohol. So if you buy the drink package, just make sure that you're not overindulging. 7th on the list is not notifying your bank of your travel plans. Now, I always have travel specific credit cards so I can earn points, and also so I don't have issues like this. But if you don't travel a lot, you probably have a basic credit or debit card, which most of us do. And Michelle M says that she forgot to notify her bank, and at one port of call, she tried to pay our taxi driver at the end of the day, and the credit card wouldn't work, and I did not have enough cash. I was mortified. Luckily, Friends with Us covered it. So your bank might flag and freeze your card if they see what they consider suspicious international transactions. And if that happens, you can end up like Michelle. You can end up stranded without funds. So just making a quick call to your bank before embarkation day, just to make sure that your cards are good to go. You let them know that you're gonna be traveling internationally, you're not gonna have any problems. And if you're like me, I'm super paranoid about this. I always travel with like 50 credit cards just to be on the safe side. You just make sure you're making that call and you're checking in before you go. Number 8, just like it's important to research the cruise ship deck plan, it's also important to research your onboard food options, because if you don't, you can be like Carly W and you can miss out. So here's what happened with Carly. Carly said, my biggest mistake was not eating sea day brunch in the MDR. MDR meaning main dining room. And then Denise M said, similar to that, not eating in the MDR, I didn't even know there was a Lido buffet and I only found the pizza the last night. Well, girl, what were you eating? But anyway, every cruise line has a main dining room in MDR and a buffet. Most people know that. But a lot of ships offer other dining options too. Some of them cost money, some of them are free, and they can be things like themed restaurants, cafes, or even in some cases, and I'll give you an example in a second, free specialty options. So making sure that you know about that ensures that you don't miss out. So one example of this is on Carnival Cruise Line. If you sail their Excel class ships, so these are the newer ships like Mardi Gras, Jubilee, and Celebration, you get the huge perk of free specialty dining with some limitations. So on those ships, they have an Italian specialty sit-down restaurant, which is Cucina del Capitano, and they have a Mexican-Chinese fusion restaurant called Chabang. I don't even like Chinese food, but I love me some Chabang. It is top tier. But if you sail on a Carnival Excel ship, you get one free meal at both of those specialty restaurants per sailing. So it's important to know that so you don't miss out on that. I see a lot of newbie cruisers missing that, and I feel really bad for them because they're missing out on some great free meals. Mistake number 9, not putting your phone in airplane mode. Keeping your phone off of airplane mode can lead to some very scary fees. And I'm not even talking about traditional roaming fees. There are at-sea fees and they are outrageous. So the first thing you wanna do on a cruise ship, I always encourage people to do this before even sail away. Just put that puppy on airplane mode. You don't have to buy Wi-Fi to connect to the cruise line app. You do have to connect to the ship's Wi-Fi. So put the phone on airplane mode, connect to Wi-Fi, start using the phone's app. And if you have cruise ship Wi-Fi, you're connected, but if you're not, then enjoy being disconnected. But believe me, whatever you do, put that phone in airplane mode. I once took a Royal Caribbean sailing. Even as a seasoned cruiser, I know this really well, and I don't know what happened my first night. Went to bed, I thought for sure my phone was in airplane mode, and I woke up the next morning with a text message from AT&T that said basically, warning, you have crazy high charges for roaming at sea, so for your protection, we're going to shut off your phone service. Which I'm thankful for, because then my bill only ended up being something disgusting like $300 instead of thousands of dollars. But the next day, I had a really hard time getting my phone back on because we were at Coco Cay. I didn't have great Wi-Fi connection. I had a really hard time getting through to AT&T to get them to turn my phone back on. And it was kind of a mess, but I'm thankful that I didn't incur exorbitant charges. And also I was able to finagle my way into getting a credit for that, even though it was probably my mistake, but I don't know how it happened, but don't let it happen to you. Just put it in airplane mode, double check, triple check, quadruple check. And if you have kids, absolutely quadruple check every time. And finally, mistake number 10 is booking ship-only excursions. Now, booking excursions through the cruise line, that's great in many cases. And if you're a first-time cruiser and you wanna do an excursion, do it through the cruise line until you know what you're doing. Just do it, it's easier, whatever. But if you're still kind of a newbie, but you've got a few cruises under your belt, consider looking at other options, because while booking through the cruise line is convenient and you don't have to worry about the ship leaving you if your tour runs late, booking on your own independently with a third-party excursion can be significantly cheaper. You have more options, you have more flexibility. Now that I've got dozens of cruises under my belt, I almost only do independent excursions. I almost never do cruise line excursions because of the fact that independent excursions are just so much cheaper. And I like smaller group experiences and I like private experiences too, instead of being on like a big bus, like I'm on a cattle call with a group of randos. So not your first cruise, but maybe your second, third, and plus cruises, consider booking with a third-party independent vendor. Make sure they're reputable, make sure you do your research. Cruise line Facebook groups are great for this, but going independent can be a really great option. So there you have it, the 10 biggest mistakes that new cruisers make. So steering clear of these will probably make for a better and more affordable experience and allow you to enjoy every moment at sea. If you found this information helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, visit my blog at profmelissa.com for tons of great free additional information, port guides, cruise tips, and everything in between. So until next time, smooth sailing and happy cruising.